Hi, I'm Space Kate and welcome to Need to Know Space, your handy guide to what you really need to know about space. Do subscribe if you haven't already and join me on this little adventure. Now, there's one thing that you need to know if you're getting interested in space, and this is kind of a friendly warning that I really wish I didn't have to give. Basically, anyone and everyone with any interest in, passion for, or work in the space sector is at some point going to get asked, did the moon landings really happen? Or, do you believe that people actually walked on the moon? Now, if it hasn't already happened to you, then quite frankly, I can only assume you're just not talking about space enough. But I'm serious. I asked a bunch of space experts about the kind of questions that they get asked most frequently, and sadly, moon hoax? That was one that was way out in front. Everybody was getting asked that question. So let's get it over with. Do I think the moon landings were faked? No. And, that's not just because I have met some of the people that have walked on the moon's surface. You'll have to stay tuned till the end of this video to hear a very embarrassing meeting a moonwalker story. But I've had people in pubs, on dating apps, even in LinkedIn connection requests, all asking me whether I really believe that the Apollo astronauts walked on the surface of the moon. It's quite shocking, really. The first time I was asked the question, I just didn't really know how to respond. I was kind of taken aback that somebody would ask me that. Now, this video is here to help you work out what you should say when you get faced with it. So do please like, share and leave a comment if you find it useful. So, how should you react to the question? Back in September 2002, Buzz Aldrin, that's the second person to step foot on the moon, one of only 12 people who have ever done so at this point, he actually punched a conspiracy theorist who demanded that he swear on a Bible that he hadn't lied about walking on the surface of the moon. Now, I am definitely not saying that this is the best way to respond, but being part of humanity's first steps on another celestial body and then continually being challenged by people who thought it was all a hoax, I mean, come on, that has got to be tiring. But if you, like me, aren't a natural conspiracy theorist and aren't really looking to pull holes in every little element of a story, one of the most incredible moments of history and scientific achievement, you might also struggle with where to start if somebody asks you. So let's get on with finding out what exactly you need to know. Now, what I tend to find is that most people, when they ask me this question, they're either kind of curious to know what my answer would be to that. They're not quite sure perhaps how to answer that themselves, or they just want to be sure. Alternatively, they're testing me. Basically, they want to see if they can get a rise out of me or see if I can actually give a good answer and not get too belligerent about it. They tend to be quite surprised when I do actually engage with them and say a bit more than, well, yes, of course I believe in the moon landings, like, why wouldn't I? So that's what I recommend that you do. And it is a real issue. Back in 2019, that was 50 years after Apollo 11 first landed on the moon and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first people to walk on its surface, a piece of research by Statista suggested that while over 90% of Americans aged 65 and above believed the moon landings were real, that figure fell to just under 66% of 18 to 34-year-olds. It was the 18 to 34 and 35 to 49-year-olds who were the most likely to believe the moon landings were actually a hoax. But also, the number of people who just said, I don't know, or didn't answer the question was also much higher in those younger age groups. So that means we really have got a job to do, letting people know about the incredible history of space, while also exciting them about the future and what it holds. So when, and I do mean when and not if, you're faced with a question, I want you to be confident to give a smart, thoughtful, non-patronising, non-physical answer to the question. And the likelihood is you'll actually teach somebody something that they didn't know before, something cool that they might share with their friends or that might stick with them. Let's get started with just a little thought experiment. Have you ever tried to keep a secret? Like a big secret? How long did you manage to keep it to yourself? How hard was it to not just want to just tell one other person? Well, the best way to keep a secret, obviously, is to make sure you're the only person who knows it. And even then, it's pretty hard. So imagine, at the height of the Apollo program, NASA is employing over 400,000 people, and they're requiring the support of over 20,000 industrial firms and universities. How on earth would you manage to keep a secret that over 400,000 people knew? Especially if that secret was of global interest and importance. Keeping a secret that big, involving that many people, over that many years? Honestly, I'd say it's impossible. It would be easier to land people on the moon. And that's what they did. Repeatedly. Not only that, but they brought those people back home safely. And with them, almost 382 kilograms of moon rock, samples of which have been analysed by scientists all around the world for 5.5 decades now. Now, if NASA had just grabbed a load of rocks from a local quarry, somebody would definitely have figured that out by now. So, moon rock, there's another proof point for you. But if that's not enough, maybe you're the kind of person that only believes it if you see it. Well, that's okay. How about you check out some of the incredible images taken by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO. Now, this is a NASA spacecraft. It was launched back in 2009. It's been orbiting the moon ever since and has created a 3D map of the moon, which will help scientists in future to identify suitable landing sites and find where there might be interesting resources on the moon. So, where we might find water ice, for example. One of the super cool things about this mission is that it was actually able to take extremely high resolution photographs of landing sites of some of the older lunar landers and impactors. And that includes every single one of the Apollo landing sites, plus Surveyor 3 near the Apollo 12 site. So here's one of the images. This one shows Apollo 15's landing site. You can see the part of the lander that was left on the lunar surface and the tracks left by David Scott and James Irwin as they travelled around in their little lunar rover. But it might seem a bit incredible. How can those tracks still be there after all this time? Well, remember, the moon has no atmosphere and there is no wind, so there's nothing to blow all of that fine lunar dust over the tracks and cover them up. Pretty amazing. Yeah, okay, they might say. How convenient that it was an American lunar satellite that took pictures of this big American triumph. Okay, sure. What if I told you other countries have also been able to locate the Apollo landing sites? They have. In 2021, the Indian Space Research Organisation, that's ISRO, their Chandrayaan-2 lunar orbiter captured an image of Apollo 11's descent stage at the Apollo 11 landing site. Tranquility Base, the Eagle, has landed, and ISRO has provided further proof. Apparently, China's Chang'e 2 also took some images, but I couldn't immediately find those online. I'm not sure if they're in the public domain. But if you're not satisfied with that, how about reading up on the laser ranging retroreflectors that the Apollo astronauts left up on the moon? The what? Okay, so the Apollo 11, 14 and 15 crews left a total of 6 of these retroreflectors on the lunar surface. They're all positioned so they face back to Earth, and they're basically like little mirrors. They allow us to ping a laser beam up to the moon, have it reflect precisely back to where it was sent from, and that means we can record the time it takes for the laser beam to travel up, bounce back from the moon, and we can calculate the exact distance between Earth and the moon. It's pretty cool that this element of the Apollo missions is not only still useful, but it is still being used up to this day. Most people you talk to won't know all these things, and so you can now amaze them with the cool stuff they didn't know, and who knows, it might be enough to swing them from ticking the don't know box to yes next time somebody asks them whether they believe that the Apollo moon landings really happened. Oh, and if anyone tries to catch you out with what they assume is an amazing gotcha, oh, how come the flag is flying in the photos if there's no wind? Well, it's simple. There was actually a rod along the top of the flag to ensure it was in full view for the photos. Because if you're going to go all that way, and you already know there's no wind on the moon, you're going to figure out a way to make sure the flag is fully unfurled for the photos. Oh yes, photos. There are thousands, by the way. Literally thousands of photos that are publicly available from the Apollo missions. Plus video, the moon rocks, the data, the research, the voice transcripts, the audio recordings. And what about the thousands of people who watched the Saturn V rockets blast off from Kennedy Space Center? Hopefully there's enough there to convince you and to help answer that question. And if you're ever lucky enough to meet one of the few remaining moonwalkers, don't do what I did when I first met Buzz Aldrin. Picture the scene. We're at an astronaut autograph signing fair at Kennedy Space Center. I've just spent all of my money on a plane ticket to come and watch the final launch of Space Shuttle Discovery. And it was scrubbed. And there is Buzz Aldrin. Now, I can't afford his autograph. They're raising money for charity, but I can't be in the same room as him and not say hello. So off I go, a mix of nerves and excitement, and I explained to him, honestly, look, I've spent my money coming to see the Space Shuttle launch. I don't know if it's even ever going to fly. What do I do? Should I go home? Should I try and stay for it? Well, of course you should stay, he said. And thus began a 4.5-month space nomad adventure, while I was waiting for it to fly and land back safely on Earth. It did make for a very interesting phone call when I rang my grandmother to explain I wasn't coming home on Sunday. Buzz Aldrin said I should stay. Sorry, dear, can you say that again? Buzz Aldrin said I should stay to watch the space shuttle launch. Yes, I thought that's what you said, but I had to double check. All very cool indeed. So what's so embarrassing about that? Well, that's the bit that happened next. I was asked, would I like to have my photo taken with Buzz Aldrin? And yes, delightedly, I said yes. I came round to his side of the table and sat on a chair beside him, ready for the snap. And I just got a bit overexcited and overawed, and I blurted out, "You walked on the moon!" And he said, "Yes, but I'm just a person." Something along those lines. And I was like, "But you walked on the moon!" And he kind of smiled, and I said, "But it's the moon, and you walked on it." And he then gestured that we should perhaps just smile for the camera. Well done, Kate. You meet one of only 12 people in the history of humanity who has walked on the actual moon, and all you managed to do is tell him that he walked on the moon. Oh well, at least he didn't punch me, eh? Maybe you can just learn from my mistakes so that on your space adventures, you don't make the same ones. Do please like, share, subscribe, and yes, share your stories in the comments. I love to hear from you. Until next time, bye-bye.
Boy, is this a neat way to travel. Isn't it great? Dum-da-dum-dum-dum. Dum-da-dum-dum-dum.